Okay, so before I show you a demo, I'd like to just make sure that you're real clear on how these rules work. Remember that we have a root web.config, and inside of that root, there's this one single rule that says allow users equals star. You can obviously change that for any given website, but let's imagine for a moment that we have left that the same. Now here's my web.config file, let's say in my application directory. So I've got a whole stack of rules here that I've specified. Now, when this is actually evaluated, when a request comes in, these things stack up. So your rules, the rules that are closest to the resource are at the top of the stack. So my web.config file in the application is evaluated first, right? It shows up there, and these are in order: the deny, the allow, the deny. There's deny, allow, deny. And then we stack up whatever happens to be, up the tree further. So if we had a subdirectory that was close to that resource, that subdirectory would be stacked on top. Then we would have, it would be up here, and then we would have our application web.config file, and then we would have root web.config. And once these are all stacked up, they're evaluated from top to bottom. So the rules that are closest to the resource tend to win. They tend to be able to override things that are higher up in the tree. This gives the developer a lot of control. So let's just walk through this. Here's an example. Let's say we have a GET request from an anonymous user, and these are the rules we've got set up. So we come into this, we come in and start walking down it. Do we match this? It's a GET request from an anonymous user. Yeah, user equals question, right? That's an anonymous request, and it's a deny entry, right? So we deny it. That one will be denied. In fact, the request will bounce back, and the user will be given a chance to authenticate. And let's say they authenticate and they provide Julie's credentials. So now the request is retried, and now it's Julie. So we come down, we don't match this anymore because it's not anonymous. We don't match this one either because it's not Alice or Bob. But we do match this one, users equals star, and verb equals get. It is a get, so we're allowed. Right? So this is the rule right here that ends up firing. So the user is allowed. What this basically means is all users, all authenticated users, because they have to get past this one first, all authenticated users are allowed to get. They're allowed to send GET requests to resources, any resources in this web application. So now let's say, for example, we got a post coming in from Julie. So Julie clicks a button on that page, does a post back. She gets past this one because she's not anonymous. This one doesn't match. She's not Alice or Bob. This one doesn't match either now because it's not a GET, it's a post. And so at this point we drop down to this rule right here, users equals star, which is a deny, and her request is denied. Okay? And then finally, let's imagine that Alice comes in and does a post. Right? So she'll get past the question mark, and she will hit this element right here, which matches, and she'll be granted access. So she can do anything. Alice or Bob can use any verbs. Okay? So this is a bit of a long exercise, but it does help you kind of see how the rule matching works. Now to show you a demo. All right, so if you take a look at my simple web, which before didn't have a config file, I've added a config file here. It's a very simple config file, doesn't really have anything in it. But what I'd like to do is I'd like to change the authorization. Now, by default, if we go ahead and just surf to that page, go to simple web, right? Administrator is there, he can get in, anybody can get in, because the root web.config file has that allow entry. So I'm going to add an entry higher up here in my web app that will counteract it. Deny users equals star. So that's going to explicitly cancel out that other entry because it's going to match all requests. And it'd be helpful if I put that in an authorization section. Okay, let's throw it in an authorization section because that's where it belongs. IntelliSense is a wonderful thing. Go ahead and refresh this, and now instead of getting access denied right away, what my browser is telling me is, hey, I failed to get the web page. Would you like to submit other credentials? Maybe that will help you get in. And there's no other credentials I can supply, so I'm going to go ahead and cancel. And I'll just see the access is denied. Okay, so that kind of makes sense. Now what I could do is go into my config file and specifically allow an individual user, users equals Dub 2008 whack administrator. Okay, Dub 2008 is the name of my machine. Administrator is the name of a local account on that machine. If I was using a domain account, this would be a domain name. I don't have a domain here. Let me go ahead and save that, and if I just refresh this page after it recompiles, well, there we go. So now I'm in, okay? But only the administrator is in, right? Because we specifically allowed the administrator in. If I go and run this, I have a terminal here that's pointed back at the same exact server using remote desktop so that I can run this as Alice. See, I'm logged in as Alice through this. Now, I used to be able to do this by just running Internet Explorer directly, using run as. And if you're familiar with run as, there's a tool that you used to be able to use to do this. It doesn't work so well with Internet Explorer on Windows Server 2008. The reason for that is because Microsoft was concerned about potential attacks. They didn't want two copies of IE running on the same desktop with two different sets of credentials. They didn't feel like that was a good idea. So you can still do this. Just terminal server into yourself, or hook into yourself using remote desktop, and run Internet Explorer. Point to the same page. Let me go ahead and grab that URL. Simple Web. So we're going to use Alice now to try to catch that page, and she should have access denied. Okay. If we want Alice to get in, we can go and modify our rules once again and add an exception for her. Okay. And we refresh that page and it works just fine. Now the rules are important. The order is important. If I put deny at the top, that's going to deny both Alice and the administrator, isn't it? Yep. Okay. So the order is important. The order of these elements is not important because they're both allow entries. It doesn't really matter. But the order between allow and deny is very important. Okay, so Alice gets in because she's allowed.